It's Thursday, October 24, 2019, and this is Globespan 24x7 News. Good evening and thanks for joining us. My name is Samuel Sugnanan, coming to you live from Georgetown, Guyana. Here are the major headlines for today. AFC to decide on future in coalition after breakdown of talks with APNU. Opposition leader wants GCOM chair to clarify decisions made by Commission. Comprehensive cancer prevention and treatment plan to roll out in 2020. Appeal court order being sought to compel cabinet and president to resign. And Bauxite Union declines the BCGI 6% increase, demands more instead. Over to you, Whitney.
Thank you. Good evening, and now for the headlines in the region and around the world. Police investigating a shooting death of a Tobago taxi driver, and a doctor has been suspended after a baby is birthed without a face in Brazil. The UN today marks 74 years as a global anchor. According to the Secretary General, American Airlines employees busted for money laundering and 16 sentenced to death for the killing of a Bangladeshi student. Let's join the sport desk for today's headlines.
And for the sports headlines, Terence Ali National Open set for November 1 to 3. Mohammed Safieddine ruled out of India tour. China to host first expanded FIFA Club World Cup in 2021.
And now for a look at the news. Imran Khan and Stephen Andrews will spend the remainder of their lives behind bars after being handed life sentences for the gruesome murder of 89-year-old Constance Fraser and 77-year-old Phyllis Caesar. Both women were found bound and gagged in their lot 243 Albert Street and South Road Georgetown home. The accused were initially indicted for murder but opted to plead to the lesser count of manslaughter, automatically admitted that between October 2 and 3, 2017, they murdered the women. The probation report was presented to the court this morning, and subsequently after, the men were sentenced. The men were represented by attorney-at-law Kioma Griffith, who asked the court to exercise leniency. They will be eligible for parole after serving 35 years in jail. Philip Sufrian of Hunter Street, All Boys Town, was also charged for the murders of the elderly women, but he is yet to be arraigned before a judge. Meanwhile, talks between the Partnership for National Unity, APNU, and the Alliance for Change, AFC, have reached a halt as the two sides cannot reach an agreement on the selection of the prime ministerial candidate. This was confirmed by AFC Executive Dominic Gaskin during a press conference held earlier today. Gaskin said the AFC has pulled out from talks with its governing coalition partner. The two major parties within the coalition government were in the process of reviewing the Cummingsburg Accord, the deal which gave birth to the coalition and led to their 2015 election victory. Gaskin, who serves as a member of its negotiating team with APNU, told media operatives that Kemraj Ramjatan must be the prime ministerial candidate for the coalition in the 2020 elections.
The AFC has advised APNU that it cannot proceed with any further discussions unless and until this matter is resolved. The AFC recognizes the efforts of the two parties and their respective negotiating teams and the significant progress that has been made in developing an enhanced framework for future cooperation. However, the AFC finds it unacceptable that the matter of the presidential and prime ministerial candidates has been repeatedly deferred. The AFC will be holding its National Executive Committee meeting on November 2nd, 2019. At this meeting, the party will deliberate and decide on its mode of participation in the upcoming national and regional elections. Thank you.
At a party conference earlier this year, AFC members voted for its leader Ramjatan to be prime ministerial candidate while putting the incumbent Prime Minister Moses Nagamootoo on the back burner. Gaskin maintained that the AFC's right to choose the prime ministerial candidate was a precondition for entering in a coalition with APNU, and it is unclear why the party kept deferring the matter.
We've already made a decision. We have internally not had any discussions that points us in that direction. And we don't accept that any other entity or any other party shall tell us or dictate to us who we should choose as our prime minister. We're an independent party. We have made a decision, we have made a choice. Why should we revisit that discussion? Why should we go back to our membership and say, let's have another decision? On what basis?
Meanwhile, President David Granger is on record saying that the renegotiation of the Cummingsburg Accord must abide by the Constitution of Ghana. Let's take a look back.
I cannot say now who I'll be running with, but we know that I can assure you that the two groups are reviewing the 2015 Accord, and we hope to come up with a revised accord.
But broadly speaking, would that person come necessarily from the AFC?
Well, it is not prudent to anticipate the outcome of negotiations.
However, according to reports, polls conducted for the coalition show that while supporters of the PPP prefer to see Ramjatan as the PM candidate, APNU-AFC supporters prefer Nagamootoo over Ramjatan. And according to more reports in sections of the media, President David Granger has been looking at other potential prime ministerial candidates from within the APNU camp. Only recently, Minister Ramjatan had expressed confidence in being selected as Granger's running mate.
I would want to say very good.
Why?
Yeah, well, because it is very good. That's the simple reason I'll have to say it is very good. My chances are very good. That's the answer to your question.
But what are the factors that you think are influencing those very good chances?
You don't think that Ramjatan is good enough to be a prime minister of your country, or you think that he's such a rotten character that he ought not to be?
It's for you to decide.
Yeah, well, it is for the people who are negotiating as to what we're going to do. And I strongly believe that, yes, it will happen.
In light of this issue, the AFC's National Executive Committee will meet on November 2, where a definitive and clear decision will be made on how the party proceeds ahead of the March 2020 elections. AFC Chairman Raffle Trotman said while both parties see the value of a coalition, Guyanese are not satisfied seeing them separate and apart. Ultimately, the executive will make that determination whether or not the AFC goes alone or whether or not it goes as a coalition in the next election. Meanwhile, the Ghana Elections Commission, GECOM, said as of Tuesday, October 22, a total of 13,310 transactions have been conducted during its claims and objections period. The process, which commenced on October 1, addressed issues relating to new registrations, transfers, changes of address, and retaking of photographs, among others. GECOM's Public Relations Officer Yolanda Ward told the Department of Public Information that the Commission is operating out of 29 offices across the country, along with several of other temporary offices. The process has so far been smooth, she reported. Teams at the various locations are working every day, including holidays and weekends, to meet the deadlines of November 4 for the claims aspect and 11th for all objections. The claims and objections period will allow persons who will become 18 years old by the end of October this year to be registered. Individuals who have had changes in their particulars, including addresses and names, can also utilize this period. Contradictory comments are made by commissioners representing both government and the opposition every Tuesday following the Guyana Elections Commission statutory meetings. Also, in the past few months, several decisions were publicized by the public relations team of the Commission, but later had to be rectified and/or corrected. Opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo said that the Ghana Elections Commission will lose its credibility if it continues to issue orders and statements and then later retract them. To avoid this, Jagdeo is making another call for the GECOM chair, retired Justice Claudette Singh, and her team to clarify certain important decisions made by the Commission.
We need clarity as to the decisions made in that particular week. So almost every Tuesday, we have commissioners who come out, sometimes from both sides, and give their views of what took place at the meeting, and they speak extensively of proposals that they have made. But we don't have the chair of GCOM saying, here is what we discussed, or here are the things that we discussed, and these were the decisions made that were commissioned decisions. So going forward, we need that clarity to avoid confusion among people or disquiet.
In addition to that, the PPPC General Secretary noted that elections are not only about the conduct of elections, but rather it is about the public's involvement in certain election standards being made aware. As such, he said it is the responsibility of GCOM to continue to educate the general populace on these issues.
I would have thought by now, having been there for a while, that the chair would have by now ensured that the decisions are made. These are simple decisions about an international presence in GCOM as a quality control mechanism to ensure that nobody tampers with the list, nobody within GCOM disenfranchises any Guyanese. And when I speak here, I'm speaking not just as the leader of the opposition or the general secretary of the PPP, as a Guyanese, because what I say here has an impact for all voters, whether you're an APNU voter or a PPP voter. But clearly by now, we should have had the clarity on this issue.
Further, Jagdeo said his party supporters and even critics feel that the PPPC could win the 2020 elections, but are concerned that it could be rigged to suit the current coalition government.
Say to them, this is a legitimate concern, because we must never underestimate the capacity in the APNU camp to try to tamper with the election results. And we've seen this happening all through their actions at many levels. However, that must not paralyze us into making it sound as though it's inevitable, because we have to work to prevent this from happening. And I want to assure them that we are working assiduously with our international partners to ensure that this doesn't happen.
That was opposition leader and PPPC General Secretary Bar Jagdeo speaking at his weekly press conference today. 33-year-old Ravindra Mahapir of number 7 village, West Coast Berbice, yesterday appeared at the Fort Wellington Magistrates Court, where he was charged with murder of a West Coast Berbice rice farmer. The charge read by Magistrate Rabindranath Singh stated that on October 14, 2019, the accused, in the company of others, murdered Gregory Reynolds of number 8 village, West Coast Berbice. Court prosecutor Inspector Philip Sheriff requested a 4 to 2 weeks since the file was not ready, nor was the autopsy report submitted despite it being done since October 15. Mahapir was remanded and is set to make his next court appearance on November 13. Public Security Minister Kemraj Ramjatan says severe consequences will be taken against police ranks who abuse the use of the siren. More details in this report.
While appearing on the Voice of Guyana radio program Insight, Public Security Minister Kemraj Ramjatan confirmed that ranks indeed abuse the sirens on their vehicles. This comment comes in light of the horrific East Bank Demerara accident that claimed the lives of 5 persons. Presidential Guard Ronald Barker are among 5 people who died as a result of an accident that involved a police vehicle which was traveling at a fast rate with its sirens on.
That policeman that was driving there very fast there on that friendship a couple of days ago that caused the loss of 5 lives, obviously was very reckless. And you've been begging the police leadership to also talk to these fellas, and they use their siren, they abuse their sirens.
According to Minister Ramjatan, efforts are being made to prevent such rogue elements from causing chaos.
But it comes back that even though you have many cars coming in, to avoid these accidents that cause so much loss of limb, life, and also damage to property, and then the trauma of it all, sometimes you are disabled for life, requires that drivers and passengers speaking to drivers, you're doing something wrong, please stop it, or put me out of the vehicle, or some such thing.
He noted that everyone must play their part to ensure that drivers adhere to the road laws.
We have, again, the important point is we have to have individual responsibility of drivers on the part of drivers. But more than that too, we have to have people in the vehicle who would notice that indeed the driver is going too fast, is reckless, and sometimes they don't speak out against that driver. And to plead with him, stop that, you're going too fast, and so on. That could also help.
In what was deemed a reckless accident, 5 persons died instantly in a 2-car collision on the Friendship Public Road, East Bank, Demerara. A taxi and a police vehicle with apparent sirens blaring crashed head-on. From CCTV footage, it was apparent that the driver of the taxi, upon seeing the police vehicle, slowed down and attempted to pull in the corner, as required by law, but to no avail. A COI ordered by President David Granger has been completed, but the findings yet to be made public. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Thanks, Shakima. Remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest news in Ghana, the Caribbean, and around the world. Coming up on the other side of the break with Shakima Day. AFC Vice Chairwoman Kathy Yu says the AFC is not dead, and comprehensive cancer prevention and treatment plan to roll out in 2020.
Globespan GT is a proud sponsor of Globespan 24x7 News. Here are some exciting news from Globespan GT. Fares have dropped for next year, starting January 20 to August. American Airlines has cheap fares on non-stop flights to New York. Flights are as low as $306 one way and $540 round trip, all tax included. Take advantage of these cheap fares on American Airlines non-stop flights to New York. Globespan has also cheap fares to Miami, Toronto, Canada, and the Caribbean. Call Globespan GT in Georgetown at 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in Rose Hall call 337-4298, and New Amsterdam at 333-6230. That call Globespan GT in Georgetown at 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in Rose Hall call 337-4287, and in New Amsterdam at 333-6230.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying tuned. We'll continue tonight's news by telling you the Guyana Bauxite and General Workers Union is adamant on their position of not accepting any increase less than 8% from the Bauxite Company of Guyana, Inc. The two parties have reached a stalemate as the BCGI is only prepared to offer a mere 6% increase for the year 2019-2020. According to the General Secretary of the GBGU, Lincoln Lewis, he sees the process going into arbitration before being resolved. The BGCI had initially offered a 3% increase, but that offer was quickly declined by the union last August. During another meeting held at the Department of Labor on Tuesday, a report now has to be submitted by Chief Labor Officer Charles Ogle due to the non-agreement. The report has to be submitted to the Social Protection Minister Amna Ali. According to Lewis, they are awaiting the minister's pronouncement on the matter before moving ahead with their next move. Meanwhile, despite many may have suggested that the Alliance for Change support base has diminished significantly since the last elections and that the party carries no weight, the party's vice chairwoman, Minister Catherine Hughes, disagrees. In fact, She says the party is alive and kicking. More in this report.
The AFC has been called dead, and the pathologists who announced us dead have had to retreat from their position. The Alliance for Change is a party of principle committed to the fundamental transformation of Guyanese society, which includes healing and reconciliation, an end to racial voting, winner-take-all politics, and constitutional reform is a priority, which we have preached since our formation in 2006.
That was AFC's Vice Chairwoman and Minister of Public Telecommunications, Catherine Hughes, addressing the media at a press conference today. The AFC executive said her party is confident that the people of Guyana, who have supported them in the past, remain committed to these principles and the national development of Guyana. While the AFC contested the last local government elections, which resulted in their poor performance at the polls, the minister sought to defend the outcome of that elections based on subjects.
None of these issues were the subjects of contest in the local government elections, which suffered from low voter turnout. In the absence of a discussion on these major issues, the AFC does not take the results of local government elections as indicative of where the party stands or its standing on major issues of national development. In closing, the Alliance for Change is willing to work with anyone committed to the principles of constitutional reform and the creation of a more equitable Guyana where everyone has an equal opportunity.
As the party prepares to celebrate its 14th anniversary next week, the AFC Vice Chairwoman said it is important to restate the AFC's standing and contributions to Guyana's political landscape.
Further, no third party in Guyana has been consistently successful the second time around. As you know, in 2011, the Alliance for Change increased its win to 7 parliamentary seats. It was this party that had the audacity to move a no-confidence motion and that started the process of removing the PPP from government in Guyana.
The minister claims that the AFC is the only successful independent party that emerged when Guyana was faced with growing racial intolerance and the prospect of continued corruption. She concluded that the Alliance for Change's decisions to join with APNU was in the national interest to restore the country. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day. Former Attorney General Anil Nandlal has filed a notice appealing the High Court's recent ruling, where his order seeking Cabinet's resignation was refused by Acting Chief Justice Roxanne George. Nandlal said he is appealing against the ruling on the grounds that the CJ made a mistake in her ruling. According to the notice of appeal, Nandlal is seeking an order from the Court of Appeal compelling Cabinet and the President to resign as a consequence of them being defeated by a no-confidence motion. Apart from asking for a mandatory order to force the government to give effect to such a ruling, Nandlal is also asking for a conservatory order restraining Cabinet, including the President, from meeting. Nandlal also requested an order reversing Justice George's order dismissing his claim and awarding the cost of $500,000 to the respondent, as well as any other orders the court deems fit to grant. Nandlal contends that Justice George failed to properly interpret the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice in the consolidated appeals related to the no-confidence vote. According to the former Attorney General, she also failed to properly apply the doctrine of stare decisis, or the principle that treats with precedents set by higher courts. In her ruling last week, Justice George had noted that the first instance court, such as the High Court, cannot contradict another High Court's ruling. She pointed out that the CCJ has said that notwithstanding the Cabinet's resignation, it still continued in office as a caretaker government. Attorney General Basil Williams said the decision was in keeping with the need to preserve a legal precedent. He was of the view that the decision was the right one, since the CCJ referenced the matter in its ruling. In other news, the staff of the Ministry of Public Health's Chronic Diseases Unit are working on a comprehensive national cancer prevention and treatment plan to be introduced in 2020. This document will be used by the ministry as a guide as they move forward in addressing cancer statistics, which poses a major burden on the local population. Each member of state of the World Health Organization has been mandated through a World Health Assembly resolution to emphasize on the development and reinforcement of comprehensive national cancer control programs that includes prevention, early detection, improved treatment, and palliative care. Coordinator of the ministry's Chronic Diseases Unit, Dr. Kavita Singh, said it was highlighted that Guyana has never had such a plan in place. By mid-2020, a plan will be in place following the implementation of several measures. One of these being the passage of a legislation protecting persons from radiation which causes cancers, she told the DPI. She added that the International Atomic Energy Agency would have collaborated with stakeholders in Guyana to draft this particular legislation. A training exercise of this nature was held in 2018, which covered different aspects of radiation protection, the international standards for radiation protection and safety of radiation sources, regulatory requirements, as well as the safety and security of sources. The plan will focus heavily on education and awareness as it relates to cancers and how they can be prevented. Screening services will also be promoted as the ministry will work assiduously to expand and establish screening and diagnosis services countrywide. Treatment, monitoring, and evaluation will follow. People's Progressive Party presidential candidate Irfan Ali is said to have graduated from the University of the West Indies with a doctorate of philosophy in urban and regional planning. The graduation ceremony was reportedly held yesterday at the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad. The UWI released its 2018-2019 list of graduates, and Ali's name was on that list. Ali's academic credentials have come under attack since the announcement of his candidacy was made public. He has since declared that all of his transcripts are publicly available. Meanwhile, the importance of education and the Human Resource Development Strategy 2030 are among the highlights of the 38th meeting of the Council of Human and Social Development, COSOD, being held at the CARICOM Secretariat. We'll tell you more in this report. At the 38th meeting of the Council of Human and Social Development, COSOD, CARICOM's Secretary General Ambassador Erwin LaRocque stated that at the center of the strategy is the construction of an innovative and integrated education system to drive inclusive and sustainable development in the region.
The strategy provides a roadmap for converged action by CARICOM member states in the fields of education and training, with the intent of unlocking Caribbean human potential.
The CARICOM Human Resource Development 2030 strategy, Unlocking Caribbean Human Potential, is an important addition to the suite of recently developed regional strategies aimed at ensuring the repositioning of the Caribbean community for successful participation in the 21st century economy and society.
The key now is taking action, and I repeat, action, to realize the vision of the HRD 2030 strategy. This 38th meeting of the COSOD is then aptly themed, Moving from Vision to Action. The issues to be discussed illustrate in concrete terms the actions needed at the level of member states and the CARICOM Secretariat, and I dare say by some of our regional institutions.
Meanwhile, Education Minister Nicolette Henry, in her remarks, stressed on the importance of quality education being available for every child.
Access to quality education is the right of every child. The quality of education, I believe, is ultimately determined by the learning outcomes that students take from school and the competencies they will develop to lead productive lives. We live in a time when lots of things are happening in the global education fraternity. For many countries, the advancement of information and communication technology to enable learning is a cardinal priority, and we have to ensure that our region is not left behind.
The 4 strategic priorities which give direction to the strategy, namely access, equity, quality, and relevance, and the resultant focus on a seamless HRD system, have been specifically targeted to address the significant inefficiencies and wastage in the education and training systems throughout the community. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day. The Indian High Commissioner to Guyana, Dr. K.J. Srinivasa, has announced the introduction of an online application for persons desirous of visiting India. According to a release, the High Commission will be switching to the digital applications from November 15, 2019, while noting that the manually filled applications will no longer be accepted. Intended visitors will need to submit their biometric data, fingerprints, and facial image, along with the online application. Visa application registration forms will be available on the High Commission's website. Travelers who use the e-visa program apply, pay a fee online, and receive their electronic visa online before traveling to India. In other news, Guyanese are set to benefit from the country's first newly commissioned water quality testing laboratory. The 83 million facility was officially opened by Minister of Agriculture Noel Holder at the Hydromet office on Brickdam. The laboratory will monitor, examine, and compile data on the use of the country's surface and groundwater resources. The Water and Sewerage Act 2002 states that the Hydromet Department is responsible for managing the country's water resources. In his feature address, the Agriculture Minister noted that the event marks an important milestone for the Hydromet Department in fulfilling its mandate. Open quote. This marks the beginning of the thrust towards establishing a national water quality monitoring network and the establishment of a central repository for all information on the quality of the country's resources, end quote, he remarked. Minister Holder explained that 98.3% of Guyanese benefit from improved drinking water quality, but only 4.2% of the nation's drinking water withdrawal meets the domestic needs, and 1.4% is for industrial purposes. He noted that commissioning of the Water Quality Lab falls under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 6, as it acknowledges the importance of water quality. We are now on Twitter and Instagram at #Globespan24x7 to follow us and spread the word. Coming up on the other side of the break with Whitney Prasad at our New York studio. Police investigating shooting death of Tobago taxi driver, and a doctor suspended after a baby birthed without a face.
To keep up with breaking news in Guyana, the rest of the Caribbean, and on the international scene, like, follow, and subscribe to Globespan 24x7's Facebook and YouTube news page. Join the conversation, get live news on the go, and news and details right here on Globespan 24x7 News.
Travelspan is a proud sponsor of Globespan 24x7 News. Travelspan has some cheap fares to Guyana on American Airlines flights. Fly from January for $234 one-way and $512 round-trip. Take advantage of these cheap fares on American non-stop flights from JFK to Guyana. That's non-stop flights from JFK to Guyana starting as low as $234 one-way and $512 round-trip. And also has the cheapest fares for Christmas that starts as low as $799 round-trip. Travelspan celebrating 25 years in business with over 10 offices to serve you. Call 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. Or book online at travelspan.com. Book early and save.
Good evening and thanks for staying with us. Thank you, Shakima. And now for our news in the diaspora. Homicide officers in Trinidad and Tobago are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of a 40-year-old private hire taxi driver of Tobago. According to a police report, shortly after 1 a.m. today, Dean O'Neill was shot by a lone gunman. Neighbors say they heard several shots and on check-in found the man lifeless behind the steering wheel. CCTV footage shows a white vehicle pulling up alongside him, a man exiting with a firearm, firing several shots, and then the man returning to his vehicle and speeding off. O'Neill received several shots about the body and died at the scene. This is the Twin Island Republic's 8th murder since the start of 2019, and investigators are working to come up with possible solutions that may solve most of these cases. Reports circulating in the media has alleged that a Portuguese obstetrician has been suspended after a baby was born without a nose, eyes, or part of his skull. The parents of the baby were not made aware of their son's severe physical abnormalities, despite 4 separate ultrasounds, including 5D imaging leading up to the child's birth. Officials attached to the medical council in Brazil voted to suspend Dr. Arthur Carvalho over allegations of negligence, owing also to complaints dating back to more than a decade involving other babies and the issue of negligence. The parents had been under the doctor's care for the entire pregnancy, and he raised no concerns until the 4th ultrasound, which he immediately dismissed. After the child's birth and his abnormalities became clear, his parents were reportedly told he would only survive for hours. However, more than 2 weeks have passed and the boy is still alive under hospital care. And as the United Nations celebrates 74 years as a dynamic global organization, the Secretary General of the Commission, Antonio Guterres, said the day highlights the groundwork of the UN, which to date has been a global anchor. To mark UN Day 2019, Guterres said the next year's commemoration of the 75th anniversary will feature a large and inclusive global conversation on the role of global cooperation in building the future we want. The UN said starting in January 2020, it will hold dialogues around the world and across borders, sectors, and generations. The aim is to reach the global public, to listen to their hopes and fears, and to learn from their experiences, he said. The United Nations was founded in 1945 to support collective action to realize peace, development, and human rights for all. The UN 75 initiative seeks to spark dialogue and action on how the world can be built as a better place, despite the many challenges faced today. Authorities have arrested 4 American Airlines flight attendants for allegedly laundering some $22,000 in cash at an airport in Florida. Customs and Border Patrol agent conducted a routine check, and after declaring a lesser amount of money, one attendant who arrived in from Chile had $9,000 tucked away, according to the report. The discovery prompted the agents to stop and check several other flight attendants, to which end the remainder of the $22,000 was found. Authorities determined that the 4 had conspired to transport US dollars into the country and deliver them to a known person, according to the report. Each of the attendants was charged with money laundering and unauthorized money transmitting between $300 and $20,000. American Airlines spokesperson said the matter is considered serious and they are cooperating with law enforcement to conduct further investigation. And government officials in Ontario have said that the country will push for its legal challenge of the federal carbon tax despite the result of Monday's federal election. Officials had previously said the outcome of the vote would determine whether or not government would fight the tax. But earlier, Premier Doug Ford's office said it would evaluate the result of the election that saw the Liberals return to form a minority government. The country's environment minister, in this regard, has said that the region will see its roughly $30 million court battle through its end, regardless of what direction was taken in the election. The carbon tax was imposed in Ontario after Ford's progressive conservative government scrapped the cap and trade system, fulfilling one of his key campaign promises. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that he will give Member of Parliaments more time to debate his Brexit deal if they agree to a December 12 election date, but Jeremy Corbyn said he would not support an election until a no-deal Brexit is off the table. Commons leader Jacob Rees-Mogg told MPs the government would on Monday table a motion calling for a general election. Under the 2011 Fixed-Term Parliament Act, 2/3 of MPs must vote for a general election before one can be held. The EU has promised to grant an extension to Johnson's 31st October deadline, even though he did not ask for one. EU leaders are expected to give their verdict on delaying Brexit for up to 3 months tomorrow. If asked, the EU's Brexit delay is to the end of January, Johnson said he will hold a Commons vote next week on the election date. If Labour agrees to this, the government said it will try to get its deal through before Parliament is dissolved for the campaign on November 6th. And a court in Bangladesh has sentenced 16 people to death for the murder of a student set on fire after accusing her teacher of sexual harassment. According to reports, the 19-year-old died in April in a small town some 160 kilometers outside the capital after she was set ablaze by the group. Those convicted of murder included the head teacher she had accused of harassment and 2 female classmates. The teen's murder rocked the country and led to a series of protests demanding justice for the teen. The trial has been reported to be one of the quickest in the country, where such cases usually take years to conclude. The prosecutor told reporters it proved that no one, quote, will get away with murder in Bangladesh, end quote. But lawyers for the defendants has promised that the court that they will be appealing the defendant's case. And Zimbabwe's state-owned electricity company, ZISA, has cut its supply to major users because of unpaid bills worth $77 million. According to a BBC report, the firm said mining, agriculture, and domestic users should settle their bills quickly to prevent prolonged cuts. Official figures said that Zimbabwe is generating less than half its peak electricity demand, and power outages have been worsened by a recent severe drought, which reduced water levels in Zimbabwe's biggest hydro plant. And thousands have taken to the streets across the country in Lebanon for anti-government protests, paralyzing its economy and blindsiding its government. These are reported as the largest demonstrations the country has seen since March of 2005, when mass protesters ended a decade-long Syrian military presence in the country. The protest action by angry citizens were sparked last Thursday because of a tax to be paid for WhatsApp calls, and saw demonstrators forcing road closures around the country. Hours later, thousands of people poured into protest sites, calling for the downfall of the regime. People in Lebanon are faced with a rapidly declining economy owing to decades of corruption and government mismanagement by the country's secretariat leaders. And that has brought us to an end of news in the region and around the world. I'm Whitney Prasad reporting from New York. Let's join now Kumar Doshi at our studio in India for Tech News. Do stay tuned for more news to come.
Thank you, Whitney. Namaste, salam, and good day to everyone. Diwali celebrations have officially begun in India today. So I would like to wish all our viewers and the family a very, very happy Diwali from the Globespan 24x7 news and technical team. Today in Tech News, we will look at network ports and memory card ports. A network port is an entry point that computer uses to communicate with other computers, hosts, or devices over the local network or the internet. A local network is a network of computer hosts and devices within a small location like a house or an office. Internet is everything beyond the local network. Network port on computers are either wired or fiber optic. Home network users and end user computers in an office use a wired or Ethernet cable, and the entry point is referred to as RJ45. A fiber optic port is used in offices that require fast network speeds. For example, servers and backbone network which carry heavy network traffic. Cables used for Ethernet are Category 5 or Cat5, 6 and 7. They have 8 shielded or unshielded wires grouped in pairs of 4 and each insulated. The connector used with a cable to plug into the RJ45 port is called the 8P8C connector. On the other hand, fiber optic network port used on a computer is called SFP and is used to connect fiber optic cables to the computer. Fiber optic network transfers data 10 to 100 times faster than Ethernet. Legacy computers used a different type of port for internet access called RJ11 to connect to a phone line for dial-up internet connection. This type of access is extremely slow compared to the internet speeds today. Turning attention to ports used to connect various types of memory cards to a computer. Memory cards used are SD or secure digital, micro SD, compact flash, and memory stick, and is on the front of the computer for ease of access. It has various slots to insert different types of memory cards and would be labeled with respective functions. Laptops usually have SD card ports only. Today's topic concludes the common ports on computers. I'm Kamal Doshi, bringing tech news from India back to our studio in Guyana for more news to come. Thank you, and once again, Happy Diwali to everyone.
Thanks, Kumar. We'll now take a look at our bridge reports. And we'll now shift our attention to what's happening in the world of sport with Abel Harris.
Thank you. Now into look at some sport. The Guyana Defence Force boxing gym will be looking to make this year lucky number 19 as they hunt another title win in the Terrence Ali National Senior Boxing Competition. This year's Terrence Ali National Open will be the final statutory tournament on the Guyana Amateur Boxing Association's calendar before the Guyanese pugilists prepare for the regional stage. The National Open, which is named in honor of one of Guyana's most prolific boxers, Terrence Ali, will punch off next weekend in a three-night affair. The National Gymnasium will be set alight from November 1 to 3rd as boxing gyms from all around the country compete to dethrone the ever-consistent Guyana Defence Force, who has won the title 18 times. The first punch will be thrown at 7 p.m. on each night, and tickets cost $500 for the stands and $1,000 for ringside. As is the norm, the Terrence Ali National Open will be used as an opportunity to scout out and select prospective pugilists for the Caribbean Boxing Championship. The Guyanese team will travel to Twin Island Republic, Trinidad and Tobago for the tournament, which is scheduled to run from December 4 to 9. Terrence Ali is a Guyanese boxer who lived and competed in the United States, where he was very successful. Out of the 70 fights in his career, Ali's had 52 victories, 21 of which were knockouts, 15 losses, and 2 draws. Bangladesh all-rounder Mohammad Safieddin's back injury has ruled him out of next month's T20 International Series against India. According to the BCB, multiple scans have been suggested that the player's recovery would take more time and he will continue to rehab for now. Physio Julian Kalifatu said that Safieddin will now have more time to strengthen his body by taking his break. And I quote, "Due to one recurring back injury, Saif will be rested from the India tour this year, giving him an opportunity to consolidate his recovery over a long period of time," Kalifatu said. Open quote, he will also have the opportunity to spend more time strengthening his body, and the situation will be reviewed by the medical team again in the upcoming weeks for further updates. Safieddin had recently said that he was taken to bear the pain to play in the T20 International Series against India. Bangladesh are yet to name his replacement. China will host the first edition of the expanded FIFA Club World Cup in 2021, with FIFA President Gianni Infantino describing it as the first real and true World Cup. The competition, which currently features 7 teams, will be expanded to 24 teams from June 2021. Top European clubs have previously said they will boycott the tournament. Qatar will stage the final 2 editions of the 7-team tournament. The 2019 competition begins on December 11, with Liverpool entering at the semi-final stage a week later. In March, the European Club Association expressed concern about expanding the tournament. ECA board members, including Manchester United's executive vice chairman, Ed Woodward, signed a letter saying that they were firmly against any potential approval of revised CWC, adding that no ECA clubs would take part. FIFA has previously been criticized for staging events in countries with poor human rights records. There have been mass protests in Hong Kong this year over proposals to allow extradition to mainland China. That's all for sports. Thank you.
Thanks, Abel. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. Before you go, here's a recap of our major headlines. AFC to decide on future in coalition after talks with APNU breakdown. Opposition leader wants a GCOM chair to clarify decisions made by Commission. Comprehensive cancer prevention and treatment plan to roll out in 2020. Appeal court order being sought to compel cabinet and president to resign. And Bauxite Union declines BCGI's 6% increase, demands 8% instead. Thanks for watching Globespan 24x7 News. On behalf of myself, Samuel Signandan, the news and technical team, until next time, do have a pleasant rest of the evening. Goodbye for now.